Frances and I have known each other for quite a few years now. She was my HR business partner in the tail end of my last few years at Salesforce. And then after that, actually, I was advising and consulting a little bit at Optimizely, where she had then moved. And so we got to know each other even more recently than my Salesforce years. Frances has a lot of experience, really spikes very high on her stints at various internet companies that are very high growth. She spent a bunch of years at Salesforce, and she was 4.5 years at Salesforce. I don't know much about Ustar. Is that also in the internet space?
Yeah, Newstar originated in really telecom and was moving into information services and marketing services.
Got it. And then she spent 4 years at Optimizely, and then has moved to Okta, which is definitely also in the rocket ship mode. And she's been there about 4 months. So we're very excited to welcome her. And as we see in her bio on LinkedIn, she's a very experienced HR director with a demonstrated history of working in the internet industry. She's skilled in succession planning, analytics, executive coaching, organizational leadership, and talent management. So, a lot of the different skills that you develop as an HR business partner. She has basically very strong HR professional skills with an MBA from Columbia Business School, and also her undergrad was at UC Berkeley. So we're excited to have Frances join. If you can all go on off video, that would be fabulous at this point. Um, Asha, are you back? Will you be able to admit folks?
Looks like she's back.
Okay.
Yes, I'm back and I have been admitting folks, so carry on. Thank you.
Okay, and I see you've started recording, which is wonderful. So I too shall shift to view speaker. So Frances, the first question that I have here is really about your career pathway and how you evolved in your HR career path. As we said, many of the students here have a focus on HR. And so it'd be great to hear, did you always plan to be in the HR space? And if yes, why? Tell us a little bit about that career journey.
Right. So I did not plan on going into HR. It wasn't something that I even knew about when I was in college. I actually planned on being a teacher. And I really stumbled into it. A friend had a tech writer position open at his company. I didn't know what that was, but I took it, and I ended up being a lot of things. I answered the phones, I opened the mail, and we had a consultant who would come in and do the HR type of activities, creating offer letters, standing up our benefits, as well as finance work. She put together like the board paperwork and all that good stuff. And I was just curious about what she was doing, and I just wanted to learn. And I also was cognizant of the fact that we were cutting her a really big check every month, and I wanted to save the company some money. So she said, hey, if you're interested, I will absolutely teach you what I'm doing. So I learned about recruiting from her. I learned about putting offer letters together. I worked with her to put together an employee handbook, and really that's where my journey in HR began. And then I went to another startup. Actually, after that, I went into finance because I didn't have a 5-year plan or a 3 to 5 year plan like a lot of people do. I was really more about learning and just wherever things took me, wherever the opportunities took me. I took the job with GlobalCast because it was a friend from college. I wanted to work in San Francisco, so I took a job doing finance with Macy's. So it wasn't about wanting to go into any particular area, but what I was very intent on was learning everything I possibly could in every single role, and really just was a sponge. And I eventually came back into HR because that's I had my first child, And I was thinking about, and it was the recession, it was 2008. And it led me back to Salesforce, which was a company that I had always wanted to work for. I actually applied to them when I was in business school, and that wasn't going to work because they literally said you need to work 120% of the time. And so it was really, my path was not about HR. It was just about learning. And here I am.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I have a very strong view on that whole interview question about where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years. I personally strongly do not espouse that methodology. So,
Same.
and for me, like you, it's all about impact and learning. And so it's great to hear you describe sort of that you're about learning. And I would imagine it makes you a much stronger HR professional, because you actually have absorbed insights from different parts of the different functional areas that you can bring to your role in HR. So if you help us understand, you've been at some really high growth companies like Salesforce, Optimizely, Okta. And I think people would love to hear, how did you get new opportunities and new roles? And what are your thoughts or advice on how to be the one that gets considered for the next role?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways to make yourself the ideal candidate. What has worked for me is really understanding what it is the company is trying to be, where they're going, and aligning to that, and preparing for that, whether it's in the interview process or when you're in the job. For instance, when I went to Salesforce, that was when we wanted to be a $2 billion company. And it was all about scale. How do we scale for growth? Like that was, and spend it like it's yours. So we wanted to make sure that we were being very thoughtful about how we spent. And so whenever I was working with any of my customers, or advocating for programs within the people organization, it was all about scale. Is this something that's repeatable? Can we do it again? We're setting a precedence. And it's not about rules and regulations, but it's all about, will we be comfortable doing this thing again, this same way? Because where HR professionals really add value is on the strategic thinking. And so as much as we can set anything of scale, a process in place, then we can continue to add value as a thought partner. And so I think whatever company you are interested in moving to, you really have to understand what are their goals and get in line with them, so you can help the business grow, so you can help the business move internationally, you can help be more acquisitive. So it's really important that you understand the business goals.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I would say for you though, Francis, clearly the other reason that has let you go from one height to the next is that clearly you prove yourself in the role so much that somebody then hires you to their next gig. So that's another good recipe for success. I think alignment with the values and the goal of the company, and doing an amazing job, and hence getting asked by people who know you well to come with them on their next journey. So when you think about how you've made yourself heard in the workplace, have you ever had difficulty doing so? I mean, Salesforce, for instance, not the easiest place to make yourself heard sometimes. And if you have any thoughts, how did you learn to make people listen? Did you have difficulty, and how did you overcome that? If yes.
Yeah, I think early in my career, it was more of a struggle to be heard. I'm an introvert. I can definitely extrovert for work. You have to, in order to be heard. I think the times when I had the most challenge in being heard and being a part of the active conversation was when I talked about HR and pushing HR, whereas HR and the people function is about meeting the business where they are, which was a line that Aaron Flynn used, who was, is a wonderful friend and sponsor of mine. And once I realized, oh, I need to understand where the business is, and align what our people strategies are based on what they're trying to accomplish, and also talking to them as a business peer. It was a game changer. Um, and an example of that is, right now, one of the teams in our organization, they are moving from a customer support organization that everybody manages across all of the products, to a segmented model. And I'm interested in talking with them about what are the drivers to move to this model in the first place. How are we going to move our vendors who are providing us service to also be able to support this model? And when leaders hear that, when leaders know that you're not just listening out for the people things, you're not listening out for, oh, what kind of training you need or how many more headcount, then they will engage with you. And I really feel like that is the key to being an active participant, to the point where they're asking for my opinion, where had I only been pushing, the people strategies down their throats, it would be a very different situation.
That's such a great point. I've been very fortunate that I've had business partners who have been truly great partners on the HR side, because they try and understand and work with me on where the business is going. And I think that's even more so the case when you're in a high growth mode. It's probably true at any time, but when you're in a high growth mode, having your HR business partner be able to work closely with you. At Salesforce, we were inventing all kinds of things like the career ladder, and how we should pay people when they move between groups, and what competencies they needed, and so much was from scratch. And so I was very
Yes.
fortunate in having HR business partners that were able to do exactly what you're saying, which is meet them where they have the need and understand the business and work together beyond just the people strategy.
And Salesforce was the first company I had ever worked. It was the largest company that I'd ever worked at as a HR business partner. I had also been at Mercer, but I was a consultant. I really feel like Salesforce really understood the value that strong business partners can bring. And I think when you're looking for where you want to be an HR business partner or a people business partner, it's good to understand how that team is valued within the organization, because you could be a whip, but if you're not in a company that values having HR be really a strategic thought partner, then it might not be as fulfilling. So I've always looked at, where does HR roll up? Does it roll up to legal? Does it roll out to finance? Does it roll up to the CEO? When HR rolls to the CEO, you know that it's an important contribution to the advancement of the company. It could be if it's rolling to legal. I don't know that I would ever want to do that.
Well, depending, of course, you might have the most unique legal head of general counsel, and you would say for sure. But
exactly.
That's such a great point, though, and great advice for this group, which is see how important HR is in any company you're going to, because that'll give you a lens on whether it is viewed as a strategic partner or not. Some of that is where it reports. Others probably come through the conversations you would have in the interview process to understand what role people play. So, changing gears a little, as somebody of biracial descent, which I didn't know, I learned recently on Facebook, and I was like, okay, great topic. How have you experienced or observed unconscious bias in the workplace? Because you have both, maybe you can tell us a little bit, but I understand Asian and Hispanic
Yeah.
in your background.
Yeah.
How have you experienced unconscious bias? And if you've seen it, how have you navigated it? What advice do you have?
Yeah. So my mom's Chinese and my dad's Mexican. And I have to say, in the beginning, I mean, I've been working for quite some time. In the beginning, it didn't occur to me that going from Cal, where the majority of my friends were Asian, I mean, that was my life, that was my world. I went into tech and it looked nothing like it. And it didn't occur to me, I think because I was just working so much. Um, and I didn't approach work as a female. I didn't approach work as a person of color. I was just getting it done. So I personally, I don't feel like I've ever experienced anything. And if I did, I was moving so fast, I didn't notice. I don't feel like I've ever been held back. But I do feel like as I have become more senior in my career, I do notice it more. I do notice how companies are, wow, we have to get our diversity numbers up. But what are they doing about keeping people? What are they doing about um, creating inclusivity? And I know that's like an overused word, but what it means to me is you are actually valuing the difference of opinions and the different experiences of those people who have different backgrounds. And it is only been recent that you could actually talk about it and be comfortable. I know I haven't until I went to Newstar, which was a public company, smaller, around 2,200. We had a female CEO and we had a very strong women in technology organization. And that's where I really started to see really active conversation about women and diversity in the workforce. So yes, I have seen people being treated differently, and I feel very confident in calling it out. You know, I've called, I've had one-on-ones with CEOs, like, you are treating this person differently. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. Fortunately, I think we're in an environment where there's more of a platform to call that out. And the more we make it more commonplace to talk about these things more openly, the more that we will be able to influence change, because it'll just be more of a constant. It won't be something that you talk about once a year in an annual survey. It'll be something that is in that just-in-time feedback.
That makes sense. Have you ever felt that being biracial yourself, that it creates any discomfort with bringing it up when you see it around you, or any perspectives on that? That's been a conversation this class has had.
Yeah, honestly, it was more of a challenge when I was younger because I never felt like I fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
In the workplace, it doesn't factor in because it feels like I'm valued on my contributions more than anything. I know that I don't have the same experience. We all have different experiences. I think I have chosen people to work with. I've been very lucky to have worked with the people I have worked with, but I don't feel like it's ever been a challenge. I have been very deliberate about being more vocal about others, though.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't feel like I've had any negative experiences. I know others have. And I have been very deliberate about making sure that we are not, that's not a part of our culture.
Yes. I think it's important that we all cultivate the ability to be spokespeople and watch out for others. We've seen a lot of data that says some people may say they're allies, but very few of them actually walk the walk.
100%.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, if you think about the whole HR organization, you spoke a little bit at the beginning about how much it's changed. It's become much more interesting. How has the HR organization in a company or in companies evolved in terms of its importance, and what is looked for from the C-suite when they look to HR?
Yeah. I think when I first started my career, HR was all about administering benefits, um, it, making employee like demographic changes, updating addresses, responding to questions. It was very task driven. And now I find that that we are a fabric of the company strategy. For instance, at Okta, myself and Charmy, my partner, who leads the product side, we were brought in to elevate the strategic thinking of the business partner team. What our leaders are looking for is we're going to their executive meetings, we're going to their QBRs. They're relying on us for observations on how their teams are working together. They're looking to us for feedback on their leadership. They're looking to us to help set the people strategy for their organizations. They're looking to us to help them be more aligned with other parts of the organization. So they're looking at us for a lot. And I think one of the things that has been very helpful for strategic business partners to be able to do that is when you have other individuals who are doing other things like investigations. It might seem small, but when your business partners aren't the people who are giving you feedback and doing investigations, it really just decouples how the organization views you. It takes you away from being viewed as HR police to an HR partner. And I think that's really, it was important for me. Like I knew that that's where Okta was going. And that was attractive for me, in addition to so many other things. But it really allows us to be very divorced from that very important, critical responsibility so that we can focus on helping the business grow and expand.
I see. That's an interesting distinction of how HR has evolved in sort of the best practice situation such that they can be partners to the business, which really echoes some of the earlier comments you made. So thank you for going through that. What challenges have you faced as an HR professional?
Yes. So people thinking I'm too young, and that made it more challenging in the beginning, not necessarily now. Another blocker that I usually get through pretty quickly is people's bad experience with HR / HR not bringing any value. So it is a constant lesson whenever you're working with a new leader, from the lowest level manager or individual contributor all the way up to your chiefs. People have very diverse experiences in working with HR organizations. And so sometimes there is the re-education of what that partnership can look like. And usually it's very successful. There are some times where, leaders just want to work with HR people when they have a performance issue. And it is really, I'm firing somebody. But that's really a corner case. But I think that's probably been the biggest challenge, is not being able to influence where you know that there is a lot of opportunity for growth for somebody.
I can see that might be the case, and I see there's some comments, questions coming up, which we will address after we're done with our questions around, how you faced those challenges. So we have a question because Asha and I were watching how within, I don't know, less than 24 hours, you had all these likes on our post on LinkedIn from Cal State about you speaking. And I think you ended up with like at least 100 by sometime this morning. So increasingly, influence on social media is a key component of leadership in terms of how you influence others in today's world. What advice do you have for those building a presence on LinkedIn, as you're very clearly well networked?
I think it's all about being intentional, and it's whether it's social media or any other platform that you're operating on. I have gotten more active on LinkedIn during the last 2 years, probably, and looking for inspiration, and following people who there's Kwame Christensen, I think that's his last name, and he's always posting things that are inspirational. So whenever I post anything or repost anything, I want it to be inspiring. And believe it or not, people remember that, especially right now in COVID, people are looking for inspiration. So I would just say be very intentional. Think about what you want your brand to be, and make sure that whatever you're putting out there represents that brand. Because when you are dealing with social media, it's two-dimensional. People don't know you. They see your picture and they see your posts, and they don't have any other context. So in order to reach your audience, whomever that may be, you just want to make sure you're very deliberate about making sure you set your brand out there the way you want for them to receive it.
That makes a lot of sense. I noticed also that you, in preparation for this, I took a quick look at who's liking Francis's post, and you have people from all your different roles. There are people from Salesforce in there. There are people from Optimizely in there. There's all these people that you have touched as part of your HR career. And so that sounds like, my guess is that's also part of it, that people had a connection, and then you started to act more on LinkedIn and they saw the value to what you posted. But it seems like your relationships and the centrality of HR, a good HR business partner, probably implies that you do make good connections with people. So I don't know if you have a perspective on that, but I was interested to see.
Yeah, well, I think your and my relationship is a prime example, right? Like, people remember you and when you make them feel good. And by the way, I'm not in HR because I love people and I want to talk to people all day. That's not it. But it's you treat people with dignity. You treat people with respect, and you hear people, and that goes a long way. Like, you and I think we worked together. You had just had your knee surgery.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So like a year. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a year.
Yep.
And then we lost touch for 3, something like that. But we remembered each other
Yes.
because we remembered our conversations. And that goes a long way. It's a little different right now in COVID, and it will probably be forever different, because the likelihood of us going back to the office in the way that we used to, with businesses looking to be more distributed in general, the way that you're going to foster those relationships will probably be much different, or rely on other things, because we won't be as densely populated in an office. But people remember, and it creates followership. I remember that's one of my leaders said that, like, one of the good litmus tests of how strong a leader is how much people want to follow them. And I totally believe that. And just be fair, be consistent, treat people with dignity, and listen.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, because I was just telling my husband actually that I remember when you and I were talking last, we were talking about how important is it to go to college. What, I don't know if you remember this conversation, but I remember it vividly. And you were giving me examples from your own network and your own family, and it was very helpful for me. So yes, it's very much about the connections that you make. So last question before we go over to all the questions that the students have. What advice do you have for those who want to progress in the HR profession, or any other advice that might be helpful as everyone manages their professional lives?
Yeah, I I would say don't be scared of HR not being your first job. Go in the business, learn how the business runs. Or if you do go straight into HR, be very curious about how the business operates, because that will give you so much data in terms of how to support the business. What are their goals? Whenever I started a new company, or we do annual goal setting, I make sure that I know what the company's goals are, and I know all of the goals of our C-suite. So I know how to focus my attention, how to prioritize what I'm doing, and how to lead and guide people within the organization. So, and don't, I think what has also made HR different these days is we don't go in rules and regulations first. Well, you can't do that because we'll get sued. It's more about what are the possibilities? Be curious. Know where to spend your time if you get an ask. Okay, this is worth maybe 30 minutes of me looking into. And lead with maybe. Don't lead with yes. Don't lead with no, but lead with maybe. What are the opportunities? And have a growth mindset, and it'll take you so far.
I love that. Lead with maybe. I have to take that. I'm much more like to go yes or no. And so I think there's some value to lead with maybe, because it leaves the door open. You learn, you have the conversation, and you come out wherever you come out. But everyone remember, lead with maybe.